I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors for Tuesday, December 17th, 2019. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll and establish a quorum?
Yes. Supervisor Cerna?
Here.
Peters?
Here.
Frost?
Here.
Natoli?
Here.
And you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Will you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
This meeting of the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors is cablecast live on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel, on the Comcast, Consolidated Communications, and AT&T UVerse cable systems. The meeting is closed captioned and is webcast at sacmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will be repeated Friday, December 20th at 6 p.m. on Channel 14. This meeting is also broadcast live on KUBU Radio on 96.5 FM. A DVD copy is available for checkout from any local library branch. Members of the audience wishing to address the board may fill out a speaker slip and hand it to staff. When the chair calls your name, please come to the podium. Also, please silence your electronic devices at this time.
Great, thank you. Again, I want to welcome everyone that's joined us in chambers this morning and to those that may be viewing. And again, remind folks that if you do want to address the board, you're certainly welcome to do so on any item that's on our agenda or that's not on our agenda. We only ask that you please fill out a speaker slip and keep your remarks to no more than 3 minutes. That way everyone has an opportunity to address the board if they so choose. So with that, let's take up our first item.
Okay, so for your consent matters, items 1 through 53, you are adopting an ordinance for item number 18 of the Sacramento County Code, Chapter 6.99.265, Title 6, relating to limited service charitable feeding operation and adding food bank fee ordinance. You waived reading on this on December 10th. For item 35, you're introducing an ordinance amending certain sections of Chapter 16.80 of the Sacramento County Code for the Antelope Public Facilities Financing Plan relating to the allocation of eligible fee credit and reimbursement amounts. You're waiving reading and continuing to January 14th, 2020 for adoption. And that concludes my notes.
Okay, very good. Any member of the board wish to pull item from consent for separate discussion or vote? I think this time we'll work from my right and go left. So Supervisor Frost.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to pull item number 13 and continue it to 2 p.m. this afternoon, at which time we'll determine if we're able to vote on it today.
Okay, so do we need to take a separate vote now then to continue it?
No, we can just hold that.
Okay, very good. That's noted. Supervisor Peters.
Thank you. I'd like the record to reflect I'm recusing myself on items 5 and 28, an abundance of caution for a potential business conflict.
Thank you. Please let the record show that. Supervisor Natoli.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to talk to item 5, leave it on the consent calendar, but I had a question and a couple comments on item 5, and then also some comments on item 28. So,
Item 5 and 28?
yes.
Okay. Item 5, approve a resolution certifying 16 County of Sacramento Melrose Community Facilities District annual reports for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019.
Okay, thank you. With contained in the material that's with the report, obviously, is the report, annual reports on the various community facilities district that we have throughout the county. In particular, I wanted to ask a question about one and make some comments about a couple of the others. The CFD 2005-1, which is our police services district. I noted that last year the revenues were about 1.1 million, and yet that's the one that actually supports patrol services with the sheriff's department, and yet we only expended 800,000. So why is it we don't spend the money in the year that it comes in for police services? Again, with some of the budget stressors that we have, it would seem to me that if we're receiving the money, then we ought to budget very close to that amount, and that showed me a difference of about $300,000, which again is not insignificant. So I guess, Nav, as we look at budget preparation, knowing that some of those receipts don't come in until you count from the end of the year, we ought to budget accordingly, because we're anticipating this year, I think, 1.172 million in the upcoming year. So that was my point on that.
Yeah,
So.
that's correct, and we'll keep that in mind when we budget.
Yeah, so we ought to expand whatever we take in that year. Yeah. Okay. other comment I had, it kind of goes to the item on Beachstone Lakes Point Pleasant, but two of the facilities districts here still have significant sums of money, and the reason why, again, I know I'll be want to work with certainly county executive and chair to have some additional discussion before this board, but I would just note that with the Laguna Elliott Ranch CFDs that we still show, and I quote from the reports that it says a Lambert Road drainage / flood control facility share contribution. We've moved, away from some of the physical facilities, but I guess I would still, that's one of the reasons I continue to press, not only because we have dollars that are set aside, but I think it's important that as we look to provide some level of additional protection for residents and property owners in those affected communities, that this money continues to reside in secure accounts, but I think it's still important, and that's why, again, one of the reasons I continue to press to have that discussion before this board is to see what we can do with some of that money. Lastly, I would just note, it still shows on page 4 of the report on Laguna Creek Ranch, Elliott Ranch, Community Facilities District number 1, it shows for projects remaining that a street light at the Elk Grove Boulevard I-5 interchange, and that's been constructed. I mean, we actually did a solar light there years ago, and so I don't know why that still gets carried over as a project unless there's something else that's anticipated there. And that's actually in the city of Elk Grove now. We relinquished the control of that.
I didn't hear the first part. You mean speed light? Is that?
No, street light.
Street light, okay.
Street light, yeah.
Yeah,
Street
we'll look
light.
into that.
I think it's a safety light. I think it's actually been done. I don't know that there's ever been accounting for it. It went into the city when they annexed that Laguna West into the city, but we actually worked with Department of Transportation to put in a solar-operated safety light, street light on the west side of that interchange, and so I guess I just wanted to make that note. Okay, thanks. And then if we call item 28 I'll make a couple comments.
Item 28, authority for the Department of Human Assistance to accept $363,000 in Community Development Block Grant funding and $269,088 in Emergency Solutions grant funding from the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency, and authority to enter into an agreement with Next Move Homeless Services in the amount of $1,117,348,000 for the operation of the Mayfair Community Campus Single Adults Temporary Shelter Services effective December 17th through June 30th, 2020, with the option of 2-year renewals.
Okay, thank you. And I want to thank our staff. I know that certainly Ann Edwards and Department of Human Assistance has worked very expeditiously over the last few months to make sure there wasn't a gap in services at the community campus. I'm supportive of this item. I just wanted to make note of two things in particular, and I appreciate that certainly Mr. Gill got back to me, as did Ms. Edwards, that we're going to continue to use the food service facility, the Shell Davis dining hall, for preparation of food on site for those that are enrolled in the program at Mather. And I think it's very important, if we have a campus atmosphere, is to have that as certainly not just a gathering place, but a place where obviously people can be a part of the food preparation. I know we are losing the job training component, and I guess I wanted to stress this morning that this is more of a temporary versus a transitional, and I certainly have iterated some of my concerns about how we're going to approach that, but I have confidence that we're going to certainly oversee the program in a way that will assist folks who are in need of shelter. But I guess I would ask that as we continue to evaluate this out there, and now that Next Move, I don't know what their capacity is. It's different than Volunteers of America, who operate that program for any number of years. But I think that some of that job training, job readiness is important, and so I guess I would just ask that as we look at how this, how the enrollment plays itself out, I think we anticipate 132 of the 140 slots will be filled at any given time. So I would just make mention of that. And lastly, I know I've spent a good deal of time with Mr. Wagstaff and certainly Ann Edwards and others, that under the previous contract there was a substance abuse drug testing protocol. I understand it's going to be different. There still will be some, there will be accountability. I'm going to say some accountability for people's conduct as a part of their housing structure out there. But I don't know what's been committed to writing, so I guess I would just ask Bruce, is there anything relative to that with next move as to how the expectation is. We're going to have a great deal more involvement with county staff. I understand that, but I think having something written behind that, because I know that would be important to have an understanding of how are going to conduct that and what would trigger that, and then what consequences, if any, would mean to those that are enrolled in programs. I think it's very important that that clean and sober aspect still be an important part of the overall program out there. So.
Thank you, Supervisor. We will definitely have discussions with Next Move about that.
Okay.
And I'll speak with Ann about that. Your point's very well taken. Also on the job training, you're quite right. That's a very important piece of what we've always done out there. So among other things, we're having discussions with SETA and
Right.
other providers to see how we might be able to do that.
Okay, so maybe it might be coming back through the board chair to have, at some point in time, once Next Move, obviously there's a transition occurring probably this moment as BOA is exiting, for at least on the single person side of the equation in Next Move. So I wouldn't expect that we'd have that all up and ready to go immediately, but I think it would be helpful for all of us to know, because I know we do get questions from time to time. So, okay, thank you very much.
Okay. That concludes remarks on consent items. Please, again, let the record show Supervisor Peters refusing on item 5 and item 28, and that we are continuing item 13 until next month.
No, till 2 p.m.
Till 2 p.m. Okay. All right. If there's no further discussion, I have no speaker slips. Is our technology working today? Okay. Please vote. Oh, wait. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Chair will second. Please vote.
Unanimous vote with those members present.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 54 is the presentation of resolution recognizing Robert B. Leonard upon the occasion of his retirement after 32 years of service with Sacramento County.
Yeah, I believe Supervisor Peters is going to present.
You can't get away with sitting over there. We have a big moment today. Rob Leonard is retiring after 32 years of service with Sacramento County. He started in 1987 at the county and worked his way up the career ladder to Chief Operating Officer for the Sacramento County Airport System, and also the Director of the military base conversion for Sacramento County for 9 years, overseeing the reuse planning and conversion of Mather and McClellan Air Force Base, which is where I met you from my earlier career. And then he became the Director of Economic Development and Intergovernmental Affairs, where he worked with many companies to grow in the Sacramento region. He was appointed as Deputy County Executive for the Municipal Services Agency in 2011 and helped guide the South County Habitat Conservation Plan to completion after nearly 20 years of effort. That was a seminal moment to getting it approved. And also participated in the construction of Terminal B and other projects at the International Airport, oversaw Sacramento County Regional Parks and Animal Care through hard economic times. Rob's hard work has been exemplary in every position he's held in the county, and he served on the Sacramento Area Commerce and Trade Organization, the Sacramento Convention and Visitors Bureau, Sacramento Sports Commission, Sacramento Regional Sports Education Foundation, and the Aerospace Museum of California. And he's earned the respect of his peers, associates, and the community he served. He's a man of integrity and is known for making the right decisions at the right time. He's also the father of 2 children, Claire and Kate, and he will be traveling, enjoying the outdoors with his wife, Div, and is also planning to spend his retirement restoring old automobiles. Please don't get any code enforcement calls to me at my office, okay? That's right, yeah. Restoring old automobiles and riding on his bicycle and motorcycle, and I think you're off to take your oldest on a college tour here pretty soon, too. So congratulations on all those things, and the board is recognizing your time with the county with much appreciation. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Supervisor Peters, appreciate your comments. I've stood at this podium many times over the years on a variety of different subjects, wide range of different subjects, and some of those experiences were really good and the outcomes were good, and some of them weren't so good. Today's different, though. You know, over the years, I've seen my counterparts, people who I admired and respected, stand here for their last comments, and it's me. This is really different. And I'm standing here today with gratitude to the county, to the board, to the executive leadership team, everybody in the organization that I've had the opportunity to work with, and those that I haven't, quite frankly, for all the good work that the county does. And then also, in my time, I've had a tremendous opportunity to work with the people that live in the county on different projects, different things related to the airport, the military bases, regional parks, for example, and have really enjoyed my opportunity to engage with the community to do good things for Sacramento County. I'm very grateful for these opportunities and the challenges as they've been presented to me, and I'm very, very proud also of our accomplishments. Not just mine, but everything was something that we really did together. Even today's agenda, for example, there are things that I was directly involved with, either most recently or perhaps in the past. And so, for example, the continuing advancement of the Orange Vale Library, and we're close, but there's still things to be done, and I'm really, really pleased to see that advancing. The East Taxiway work at International Airport, one of those projects that had a few bumps in the road, but was pleased to have the opportunity to see it come to closure, to deal with some pretty complex and sensitive
You and me
issues out
both.
there. Pardon me?
You and me both.
Yes, for a lot of reasons there. And then Metro Air Park. There are a whole collection of things on the agenda today for Metro Air Park. Now, these, it's really reflective of my experience in the past and my engagement in the past, and Steve and the team and Troy Givens and the team have done just a great job continuing to bring that forward. During my tenure here with the county, and prior to joining the county, I had the opportunity to work with a lot of really smart and successful people, and I learned things from all of them. A lot of you sitting here in the chambers today, both how to deal with things, how to open my mind and look at things differently, and then also, quite frankly, I learned how not to deal with some things too. You learn both ways. Yeah. And one of the people, and I appreciate Susan's comments this morning on her mention of the time that we first met and started working together, because one of the people that was I considered a friend and a mentor was Peter McEwen. And, that was a wild time for the county, a wild time for me. Pete would both provide encouragement and kick me in the tail. He was very open with letting me know, what we were doing well and where he thought we were coming up short. And I really appreciated that, so I wanted to acknowledge that. Yes. And so it's also important for me to acknowledge my wife, Div, and Claire and Kate, who are such a part of my life and have provided a lot of encouragement in terms of what I do, and then also yelling at me, say, why are you paying attention to that now? You need to be here with us. So appreciate that. And then also, my parents, my mom and dad, who were tremendously supportive over the years, and my mom, who has now moved here to Sacramento. So with that, I'm excited about the future for my family and me as we move forward into this next chapter. And as I mentioned at the department heads meeting when I announced my plans, I'm really excited about the future for the county. There are a lot of big things, a lot of big opportunities that are available for us. You've got a great senior leadership team and great organization to take care of those details. And so I really look forward to moving forward, seeing the organization move forward and the challenges that come. So thank you.
Thank you. Give you a hug.
Don't go anywhere, Rob. Don't go anywhere. We have others up here that want to offer their comments. I know both Supervisors Natoli and Frost wish to do so, but I'm going to go ahead and take the chair's prerogative and say a few words now myself. First of all, I'd like to express my thanks to you. One of the things that, 32 years with any organization is pretty remarkable. So I think the fact that you've given Mr. Natoli a run for his money is something to behold. But one of the things that many people may not realize is that Sacramento County is fairly unique among the 58 in the state in terms of how much urban urbanized territory we have in the unincorporated area. In fact, we sometimes jest that the unincorporated county is the largest city in the county with nearly 600,000 people. And it takes, I'm sure as Supervisor Peters can attest especially, it takes quite a lot of careful management to make sure that we're not just doing what is expected of us in terms of how all counties are expected in the state of California to provide countywide services, but on top of that, to make sure that our roadways are getting the attention they deserve, our parkways are getting the attention they deserve, that we have a robust economic development agenda, that we're entrepreneurial in spirit when we attempt to problem solve. And you've been at the forefront of that spirit, quite frankly. And I think, I've only been here going on 9 years. Others have certainly been here a lot longer than I have, and have seen you, progress through your various titles. But I just want to offer my thanks, even though I may not have a lot of that urbanized territory in the unincorporated part of the district I represent. Your help with the American River Parkway, for instance, which I know you have a great deal of passion for and a lot of focus on over the years, has been very much appreciated by me and my staff, and certainly by the constituents we represent in District 1. So I just wanted to offer those remarks, and I want to wish you well in your retirement. I know you enjoy the outdoors, and you have a lot to do with your family that you've probably postponed for a number of years. So I'm sure you're looking forward to that, and we wish you well. And with that, I have Supervisor Natoli in the queue.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Rob, I will certainly add to the comments this morning, obviously with, a great deal of appreciation and thanks for your dedication to public service. But I think the breadth and depth of some of the things you worked on obviously are hallmarks in your career, but I think also show your ability to come into situations often that were in need of attention, but certainly the ability to apply your experience, your talents as it relates to obviously being a problem solver, and someone who I think exhibits good organizational skills, but also the ability to many times to think outside the box. And I think back certainly even prior to my election to this board, because obviously 32 years, and I'm working with my predecessor, but someone who I think considered you not only a good friend, but certainly appreciate your skill set, and that was Toby Johnson. I know that you had a chance to work with him on airport-related matters earlier in your career with the county. And, you didn't miss a beat, obviously, with the base conversion activities, both Mather and McClellan, but I know that you and I got a chance to travel on a few occasions to meet with Air Force personnel in some of the early days of closure and reuse planning for Mather. And I think, again, your expertise, both in airport management, but also I think in the economic development realm, really assisted this county, and I think it was detailed obviously in the comments that Supervisor Peters made as related to early wins, some of the early frustrations, some that may even linger today, because I think back, we're 26 going on 27 years post closure, and all the planning that goes in post closure of Mather, and all the successes. But some of the early wins, obviously you were very instrumental in the $10 million EDA grant that brought some of the initial improvements there as the base was being considered for reuse. Obviously your work with Peter and Susan in McCune companies at the time, and just the general oversight, working with parks and with transportation and airports, and the Rancho Cordova community, and a whole lot of folks who had some pretty wild propositions for reuse, as you would recall, everything from a NASCAR track to a federal prison to a 50-story hotel, and the story goes on and on and on. And you fielded a lot of those, I think, initial thoughts, and were helpful in putting together a plan that obviously both at Mather McClellan, with a lot of team members here at the county and others in the private sector, have really proved to be, I think, models, as pointed out in the resolution, for successful base reuse and conversion. And I got to give you a lot of credit for your leadership in that realm. Obviously, more recently, with the municipal services aspect, you really took on, as we all do, learning about water and some of the efforts to make sure that this county and its people and its landscape are protected. And again, I appreciated your expertise in that regard, certainly your support for folks in water resources, but also with the executive's office and making sure that this board and certainly this county was clearly heard on matters that were of and continue to be of concern to our community. And I would just say too that you've always been a real steady hand when it comes to, I think, thinking through issues and assisting in problems. I know you've fielded phone calls probably as you have from others on this board on weekends and evenings. And I want to thank you for your work in the animal care area. I know that was an area that you certainly got real familiar with, and I'm certainly prodded you at times, but I appreciate your efforts and your dedication and in so many ways. Been, I could go on and on and on, but I think you've certainly lent a good deal of your life, certainly your professional life, to serving the people of this county, and for that I'm grateful, and I know they're grateful as well. And I want to acknowledge your contributions, and I know that obviously there's a big world ahead when it relates to retirement, certainly with family and some of your other interests. And I want to just thank you for your good work, for your friendship over the years, and for your dedication to making this a better place for all of us. And so I want to wish you well. Godspeed, Rob, to you and your family.
Thank you, Don.
Supervisor Frost.
Hi, Rob. I just want to tell you that the District 4 team holds you in very high regard. We have all really enjoyed working with you. We've appreciated your leadership and your vision and the way you sincerely listen to what we're trying to accomplish. And you somehow have this analytical ability to go through all those papers and get to the heart of, okay, this is where we can get to the heart of this problem and solve it. And I'll never forget one of my promises when I got elected was that I would help Orangevale get a bigger library, a better library. And because of you and Britt and your team, we worked for 3 years on that. It was a long time coming, and there were 4 supervisors before me who did several terms who tried to get a better library for Orangevale. And thanks to the Library Authority working so well with us, we were able to figure that out. But I attribute it to your vision and your tenacity, and you just weren't. We weren't going to stop until we got it, and it looks like we're almost there, so I'm very excited, and I want to thank you for that. The community wants to thank you. And I want you to know that I will personally miss working with you. I'll miss your smile, even when we're talking about tense topics. You have a smile on your face, and that's so wonderful. And I hope that you have a wonderful retirement with your family, and I hope that you're able to go to the quiet and actually deal with it, because you're probably not used to that.
Yeah.
That, I imagine, is going to be hard, but I wish you all the best and God's richest blessings in your retirement.
Thank you. Thank you, Sue.
Thanks again, Rob.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, please.
Item 55 is the 2020 federal and state legislative priorities.
Hey, stranger.
Hi, I'm back. Good morning, Chair, members of the board. Natasha Drain, Governmental Relations and Legislative Officer. Before you today are your proposed 2020 federal and state legislative priorities. I'd like to briefly summarize the proposed substantive changes included in Attachment 1. On pages 5 and 12, we've updated the federal and state water sections to change the name to reflect the new proposed single tunnel project in the Delta, formerly known as California Water Fix. On page 9, we updated the language in the Health and Human Services section relating to Title 4E to reflect support for legislative efforts to transition counties to the Family First Act. On page 12, we've added language in the park section indicating support for trail connectivity through park systems. And finally, on page 15, we've added a new section titled Coroner Services. The county's coroner, Kim Jin, was involved in helping with mass fatality events this past year. This experience gave her an understanding that funding for training for these types of events is needed, as well as multidisciplinary teams to respond to these kinds of events. So this summarizes the proposed changes, and staff is recommending approval of this item. I've also asked your state legislative advocate, Steve Cruz, to be here too to help with any of your questions. So.
Okay. Thank you, Natasha.
Yep.
Any questions for staff or our consultant? Supervisor Frost.
I just want to thank you, Natasha, for pulling all this together and for making it so easy to understand the changes that you're making. Yeah. There were a couple of items that I wanted to go on record as opposing. In general, I want to support the package, but there are a couple of items, and I've probably done this before, that I do not support. And so I can just read through them quickly. Item 2, general, state, and federal priorities. Item 2B, number 8 and 9. 8 is supporting legislation that provides sufficient revenue for county services, and 9 is supporting legislation that provides sufficient revenues for fund caseload growth in the state mandated programs. Some of these are because they're vague in nature, and I would need more information to know if I would support it, and so I want to go on record. I have this in writing, so I can give it to you.
Okay.
And some of them are because I don't support. Item 3, federal priorities. C, transportation. 2A, which is support enhanced revenues to keep highway users trust fund solvent. This includes support for an increase and/or index of the federal gas tax. Item 4, state priorities, major county programs and issues. 1, public safety and administration of justice. Item I, in the context of bail reform. I need more information on that to know how I would, what position I would take and if I would support. And then item 18, transportation, number B, item B, support the preservation of existing funding sources dedicated to transportation, including Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017, SB1. I did not support SB1. And I have this typed up if that makes it easier for you.
Yeah, great.
So, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions or comments? I don't have anyone signed up to speak. I'll just offer these comments. First, I want to thank you, Natasha and Steve and Bruce. You and I got a little roped into working on the Family First issue late in the year. But I just want to note for the public's benefit how important it is for us to be very, very thoughtful about where we place our advocacy and how we work through some very talented staff to ensure that, especially when it comes to supporting measures that enhance revenue for this county. I mean, counties, unlike other local governments, whether they be municipalities or school districts even, really rely on the partnerships that we enjoy with state and federal government, and certainly the revenues derived therefrom to carry out the service delivery that's expected by our constituents. So it's very, very important that we're carefully not just monitoring legislative initiatives both at the state and federal level, that we're speaking with a forceful voice, sometimes independently, but more often than not collectively with other counties in the state of California through our associations, both CSAC and at the national level through NACO. So I just wanted to publicly thank our staff for the great job that they do in that regard. Mr. Natoli.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of quick items on, actually on page 6 of the, I guess it's the strike through, relates to subheading here. The floodplain management portions, Natasha.
Page 6 of attachment 1, Supervisor.
Yeah, attachment 1. Well, I guess they're saying this was just a strike through where we actually,
Okay.
so.
Oh, yes.
One, I'll come back to sub Ds and E, but I wanted 3 under that where it says South Sacramento Habitat Conservation Plan. It says support and request assistance to acquire federal regulatory approval for the South Sacramento Habitat Conservation Plan. I think we actually have done that.
Yes.
So I think you can cross that off the list,
Yes, let's update that.
which is a good thing. And then I'm just backing up though to under the floodplain management. I'm curious as to whether there are any legislative initiatives, because this has been on, we've been carrying, for example, D, where we advocate and support changes in the National Flood Insurance Program and federal emergency management regulations, which would allow for replacement of and reinvestment in existing agricultural structures and operations in the floodplain without requiring elevation of floodproofing. You know, I've kind of lost track of that. I know that had worked with our federal legislative delegation on those things, and also then E with, you know, efforts to provide access to affordable flood insurance for property and business owners in the county, including agriculture and legacy communities, which continue to be, I think, significantly impacted. And, you know, the changes that occurred a couple of years ago that I guess bought a little bit of time relative to the insurance premiums. In fact, I've had some recent conversations on 2 occasions now with folks who just purchased their home outright without flood insurance because, you know, didn't have, you know, either the cost of and or didn't have it previously. And so I guess I would just ask, and maybe as a follow-on, I know that we continue to carry this on our legislative agenda, but you know, where we are, and if there's something else that we can do to maybe ramp up efforts against, these are, you know, national policies, obviously, so what we think about things here in Sacramento County don't necessarily influence the rest of the country legislatively, but I think we had some allies in this regard, so I guess I would just ask that we maybe have some follow-on with our either federal and or state legislative folks to know where we're at, and if there's something else we can do that with either bills, we indicate support, but we might re-energize around that a bit. I think it would be helpful, and particularly we got the National Heritage area designation for the Delta. Our legacy communities, again, have, I think, organized both in this county but also in other Delta counties. And I certainly have been advocating for economic reinvestment, but part of what I think will be a barrier in the future are some of the things that are listed that we either support or advocate for. So I guess I'd like to maybe see what we could do around those particular elements, recognizing obviously we're just a piece of the much larger pie on those.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Great. Okay, I have no one signed up to speak on this item. Is there a motion, or do we need to take
You want to do 2 separate ones since Sue's out on a number of them?
What's the best way to do this?
I don't think we took a separate motion the last time. We'll just note it in the record that she's.
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
I'll move the item.
okay, it's been moved by Supervisor Peters, seconded by Supervisor Frost. Please vote.
Thank you.
Unanimous vote with those members present.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Item 56, the annual reports for the County of Sacramento Development Impact Fee Programs for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019, and resolutions making necessary Government Code Section 66001 findings with respect to each development impact fee program.
It's just
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Bob Davison, the Division Chief of the County Engineering Division. And this is a receive and file item for annual reports for 14 development impact fee programs. These reports are required by the government code to be reviewed by the board at the end of, before the end of the year for the following the fiscal year for which they're reporting. And these reports are reporting our annual reports for fiscal year 2018-2019. The reports include annual reports for the 8 infill park district and county infill areas, plan area fees, including the Vineyard, the North Vineyard Station, the Mayfair and the Antelope fee programs, also for the countywide library fee and the Cosumnes Community Services District fire fee. Also included in this item are 7 resolutions making government code required 5-year findings for these 14 programs. Those by virtue of their name, 5-year findings. That's the portion that's on this item about every 5 years. So it wasn't on last year's annual report item. But those findings are important, and today's actions are making those findings as well. Included in each report are the required reporting items, including the amount of the fee, the beginning balance, the amount of the fees collected, interest, public improvement expenditures, and then the ending fund balance. I'm not going to go into the details of the reports, but certainly can answer questions. I will point out some highlights. The Elk Grove Florin project from Gerber to Florin, including the bridge at Elder Creek, it will be out to construction shortly in the near future, and it's a project that should take about 1.5 years to build, and it's funded by 3 of these programs: the Vineyard, the North Vineyard Station, as well as a Florin Vineyard program, which there's no annual report for because it was adopted after the fiscal year that we're reporting, but it will certainly be part of next year's items. But it's an important part of funding that project as well. And that project is funded 60% by these programs and 40% by other funding, including federal funding. The Antelope area, the report shows not much activity, but with the update of the facilities financing plan about 1 year ago, and with the Barrett development poised to take off, we expect significant activity in Antelope over the next several years, including the developers constructing improvements to Antelope Road, Don Julio Road, including the intersection at Poker Lane, and a significant turnkey park improvement that will be provided by that development. In the Mather fee program, there is a Douglas Road extension design that is going to be put forward by Department of Transportation. They'll be working on a preliminary alignment study and then hopefully moving forward with a CEQA and NEPA clearance. They have other sources, but the Mather fee program will be contributing $300,000 to this effort. The library fee program, I heard a lot of discussion about the Orangevale Library today, so the library fee program happens to be a funding source for the funding the lease for the expansion, for the long-term lease for the expansion of the Orangevale Library. And there are 8 infill park districts with several miscellaneous improvements constructed throughout those areas, and I won't go into those in detail, but they're all reported here in the annual report. And with that, that's my presentation, and I can answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Bob. Any questions for staff? Supervisor Ndoli.
Yeah, just a quick one on the Mather Public Facilities Financing Plan. So we showed a beginning fund balance or actually ending fund balance in that fund for almost $690,000 at the end of the 18-19 fiscal year. And you said $300,000 was going to be expended on the Douglas, and so that will still leave a balance of roughly almost $400,000 or almost $400,000 in the fund.
That's correct.
What's
yes.
contemplated for that, Bob? What is either transportation or what is being contemplated for the remaining portion of that?
So right now there's no active plan for that money, but it's available for any of the projects that are tied to the Mather fee program and the Mather financing plan. So that's something that we'll have to work with, certainly with the board and the Department of Transportation on how to best utilize those fundings. But at this point there is no call on that right now.
Yeah. Well, and again, I'm very pleased. I know I had a briefing last week, a meeting with Troy, and Rick Carter was there from Transportation, that we're advancing the Douglas Road extension studies, as you said, and the work, the CEQA work, which I guess is contemplated to be about $450,000 plus or minus. So I guess my follow-on question then is that we have a remaining fund balance. I know that Economic Development had a list a few years back, and I imagine they've maintained that list with some infill road projects, commitments to do some additional curb, gutter, and sidewalk, as well as some other improvements, adjacent to airport properties and so forth. Is it contemplated that we would use, and could we use that money to do those? I can think of a couple in particular where actually we either sold property or whatever, and part of we retained some commitment to do some of those improvements.
So I haven't had any recent discussions with economic development about that, but I'd be happy to.
Yeah,
But
I'm not saying run the fund down to zero, but it gets replenished annually with some collections here. So I guess I'd be curious is that, those projects don't get any cheaper to do. So I see Steve kind of looking behind you there, Nam. So
Yeah,
yeah.
Okay, good. Yes, Supervisor Natoli, we are working with Economic Development and Department of Airports to look at some other potential recommendations for the remaining funding. But as you said, we didn't want to take it all the way down to zero with this specific project, but with the combination of the $300,000 from the Mather program and funding that transportation has available, we're advancing the preliminary design. The alignment, as you know, kind of has to be threaded through some needles there to get that figured out exactly where that can go, and then do the environmental processing on that extension. As far as the other projects, yeah, we're working together kind of right now to gather what projects might be eligible for this funding and where that might be the highest priorities, and have that discussion with the board to determine if those are in fact the priorities.
Okay, yeah, because I know 400,000 may not go very far, but there are some small pieces that, if I recall, some of the amounts were close. At least you could fund one or two of those projects potentially over the next couple of years. So
That's right.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. I have a question for County Council, and it may amount to a suggestion by the end of the dialogue here, but remind me again, is there a statutory time limit, Lisa, in terms of when we begin collecting impact fees and the time that they have to be spent on for the purpose for which they were collected?
The statutory timeline is 60 days from enactment that you can start collecting them, because the ordinance only goes into effect after 60 days. As far as the timeline, I'd have to go back and look at the statute, which I can do today and get back to you. I do know there's requirements, as you know today, what we're doing is the annual report and then the 5-year lookout. So I don't know the exact timeline, and I'm not sure if there is one, but I can get back to you on that.
The suggestion I'm leaning towards, Bob, is this. I note in the annual report that there's a section called refund that you note at the end of each different type of impact fee. But what I don't get a sense of is if let's say the statutory time limit is, I'm just throwing it out there, 10 years. If we've been collecting a set of impact fees or a particular impact fee for so many years, and the improvement for which the fee was collected in the first place has not been initiated, hasn't been completed, what the report doesn't tell me is how close we are up against that timeline to get the improvement done. And so that would be helpful in the future moving forward to understand where we are in that regard. I know that in the past, for instance, this is back in the late 90s, a BIA of the Bay Area actually did basically an audit or an assessment across the 9 counties of the Bay Area to look at what local governments were collecting and whether or not they were expending the impact fees timely to actually mitigate the impacts of new growth. And in many instances, they found that those local governments were not spending them in a timely fashion, and in fact had owed back to the various members of the development community millions of dollars. So I don't want us to get into a similar situation, and I know that much of that is, perhaps all of it is dictated by Government Code 66,000. So I think it would be good to maybe add that to kind of the set of information that we get regularly on the status of impact fees.
Okay.
So in looking really quickly at 66,001 or 6601, in the 5-year report, that requirement, what you just outlined, is something that we're required to do, and that every 5 years it's to determine how much has been collected, how much is left to be expended, and the approximate time of that expenditure.
Right, and that's that last part that I'm just not seeing here is how much, like what, the clock.
This is the annual report, so that's probably why. This
Okay.
isn't the 5-year required report. As far as I know, Bob can correct me if I'm wrong.
So it doesn't sound like it's required by law, but it
Right.
nonetheless, I think would be of value for us to know that annually.
Correct. No,
Okay.
we'll do that.
Great. Okay, no one signed up to speak on this. This is a receive and file. Any further questions for staff? Okay, if not, we'll move on. Next item, please.
Item 57, approve a credit and reimbursement policy for transportation projects under the Sacramento County Transportation Development Fee and Transit Impact Fee Program, and approve the 2019 update of the program, Nexus Study and Fees.
You looking to raise the podium?
Yes.
Oh,
There we go.
Good morning, Chair and Board. I'm Rick Carter with the Department of Transportation. As mentioned, the item before you, we're looking for approval of the credit and reimbursement policy for the SCTDF, and to approve an update of the Nexus study and an update of the fee. It's largely related to those policy changes. I'm going to go over highlight some of the key points of the policy. The policy addresses the SCTDF capital fund only. There's not a policy for the TIF portion of the fund. We think it's unlikely that we will have anyone doing work that is creditable or reimbursable under the TIF, because that's the transit portion of the fee. In addition, we think it's unlikely to have anyone build projects that are funded with grants or Measure A. That's likely to be done by the county. If it were done, we'd handle those individually within the agreement. Eligible costs include construction, right-of-way, and soft costs. The costs are limited to the values set forth in the Nexus study, less any amount in a finance district overlap. The Nexus document doesn't include the overlap amounts. Those are handled in separate documents, so the policy recognizes that those adjustments need to be made. Policy requires documentation of the costs to substantiate them. It also allows for balancing of costs between projects over a 4-year period. So a project comes in high, another project comes in low. Those can be balanced out. The meat of the changes is really within the right-of-way and the frontage. The code allows credit or reimbursement for right-of-way that is dedicated at the time of construction. Traditionally, the SCTDF has not allowed credit or reimbursement for that right-of-way. However, with the last adoption, there are detailed estimates for right-of-way, and so the fees include those right-of-way costs. So we thought it was appropriate that they would be compensated for the costs since they're paying those fees. What the policy does is limit it to the greenfield cost that's in the program. That's the vacant land cost, so we don't end up with issues arguing over appraised values. It's the fee amount set in the program, so that's the recommendation in terms of reimbursement. What the policy also allows for is right-of-way to be credited if it's required to be acquired. An example of that might be a logical segment where perhaps there's a single-family home within that stretch that doesn't have frontage. If they need to acquire that land, we'd work out fair and reasonable value. The last bullet is regarding frontage. The SCTDF assumes in the underdeveloped areas that the property owner will fund and construct the frontage improvements. However, when you look in areas, a lot of vineyard, along the Jackson corridor, stuff in Alberta, there are isolated parcels that were developed some years ago that have no frontage, single-family homes, occasional businesses. The Nexus study currently does not include anything that would allow for funding of that frontage work to be done. So we've made changes that if we require that frontage to be built on essentially someone else's parcel, then there's a mechanism in order to pay for that. Credit terms, we've proposed a 70% fee reduction for a priority facility. Those facilities being projects listed in the TIP-G and the CIP, or already operating at a level of service F prior to development coming in. Non-priority facilities would get a credit up to 35%. The balance of the fee would be paid into the SCTDF that will allow for the county to construct county priority projects, or also fund reimbursements. However, we have proposed an incentive that all facilities be considered a priority over the next 8 years. Last item is if the property owner is looking to take their credits before they have completed construction of the transportation facilities, they have to bond for it, which is a kind of a standard condition in all the finance districts. Key points on the reimbursements. Owners are eligible for reimbursement if their costs exceed what they've been allotted in credits. Reimbursements would be on a first-come, first-served basis based on acceptance of the project. Funds would be set aside for reimbursement as part of the annual budget. The department would make recommendations on that amount, considering the anticipated revenues in the SCTDF, likely reimbursements, the need for county-built projects. The board letter notes that our sort of goal for that is 20% of the anticipated revenue of each year.
I'm going to interrupt.
Sure.
Supervisor Peters has a question.
Thank you. On the reimbursements being first come, first serve, and based on a budget that you have, do those people that don't get a full reimbursement, those people or projects, stay first in line until the next year's budget comes up?
Yes.
Okay. Do you anticipate that being a common action, or?
We hope not. It's really going to be dependent on the pace of development and the size of the projects that come in and where they come in, because of a lot of the development is tied in with the finance districts, where the funding is in the finance districts. So,
I can't hear you, Rick.
I'm sorry. A lot of the development is set up right now in finance districts, where most of the SCTDF funding has actually been shifted into the finance districts. So I don't anticipate large amounts of projects actually coming in under the SCTDF, because so much of it's in the finance districts, but there could be. And part of that would be looking at the annual, when we propose an amount for reimbursement, looking at the revenues and what's outstanding and what we anticipate coming in and making those adjustments.
Okay, but they will stay in line for the next year's budget.
When the project's accepted, they get in line.
Thank you.
Last item is, after the project's accepted, they've got a 4-year time period to get their documentation in for the credits and reimbursements. The credits wouldn't expire or anything. It's just a kind of requirement to not allow them to wait forever to submit documentation.
And then back to my earlier question, sorry. They're not going to go off a list after 4 years or anything like that?
They would not.
There's no time limit?
There's no time limit.
Okay.
The point for this, my prior employer had no deadline, and they had companies that went bankrupt, and they carried a liability infinitely. That liability never went, so. As I know, we have cost revisions to the Nexus study. So this slide shows what those included. We noticed some inconsistencies as we started working with the numbers, so we corrected some frontage inconsistencies. We included a frontage allowance that I just spoke to for the existing parcels, if the developer is required to build on an adjacent parcel. We did discover there was a few spreadsheet errors where there were items that didn't sum correctly, and that's what that third bullet is, and we fixed those costs. As I noted earlier, we removed right-of-way costs for internal roads. We also caught a couple of errors with overlapping distances between roadway segments and intersections on a handful of projects, and we received 3 grants from SACOG, so all those changes went into the updated Nexus study that revised the costs. With that, there's a new fee schedule. The combined effect of all the changes is reduction across the board. Most of it fairly minor. The largest is in District 3, largely due to the removal of the internal road right-of-way.
These are not supervisorial districts.
These are not supervisorial, they
I'll
are...
make that clear.
Yes, they are fee districts. So the slide shows the changes in the 6 fee districts. There's also reductions to the special finance districts as well. Because these are fee reductions, they don't have a 30-day waiting requirement that we normally have with fee increases. As such, we're proposing they go into effect January 1st to give staff time to get it into the computer system. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you. We do have some questions. Supervisor Natoli?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Rick, a question it would fall in the fee district, probably District 4, I guess. The changes, I think we contemplated that the relinquishment of Jackson Highway, again, that's still a pending, probably going to be a long pending item. Does that affect the calculations as it relates to requirements? Because as long as it's under Caltrans jurisdiction, there are, those standards, again, are fairly comparable to ours, but I know one of the reasons we saw relinquishment was to do complete streets and to employ some different distances between potential signals as development occurred and so forth. Has there been any recalibration, recognizing that that's not in the immediate foreseeable future as to costs associated with the Jackson Highway, particularly the frontage improvements, but all the main intersections?
There has not been any recalculation or reconsider of changing the proposed projects along the Jackson corridor regarding relinquishment. The discussions that have been had with Caltrans, we're not expecting any significant change to what the projects might look like, whether the state relinquished that to the county or not.
Okay, that's just that's a little different than I understood, because again, one of the reasons, as I said in my comment a moment ago, that we were thinking relinquishment was that with the complete streets that we might be able to do some other things as it relates to whether it's curb cuts or adjacency of bike lanes and such. And so again, that gets down to a fairly finite level of detail, but nonetheless, I'm just kind of curious that I guess that. So it's going to be the same whether it's under their jurisdiction or ours.
I will look to our director. My understanding was we didn't have a big change.
Good morning, Ron Bakary, Director of Transportation. There is not a change in what we plan to build on Highway 16. It's just that if we relinquish the effort, prior to relinquishment, we'll work through Caltrans. We still plan on proposing the same roadway that will accommodate the development.
The exact same?
Yes.
Because again, maybe I misunderstood, but I mean, in meetings, certainly prior to, working with Mike Penrose and so forth, because I went to some of those meetings with folks talking about it, and that was one of the, if I recall, was a bullet point about how, allowed us to have some flexibility as relates to street design, recognizing you still got, a 4- or 6-lane designation with, but that the Caltrans standards would dictate potentially either higher speeds and or some, again, if I misunderstood it, then I'll stand corrected, but that's not what I understood, Ron. There were some distinguishing factors, as I recall.
Yeah, the Caltrans on highways, it's just 16, looks to the locals for what they're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
We do feel that, and some of the bullet points as we move forward with that process was that it would be easier us to move through the process without running everything through Caltrans. But prior to relinquishment, we'll just apply, and we work through Caltrans all the time. So it'll be a similar process that we're used to. We're still going to pursue what it is that best serves that development and best serves the county. And nothing will change as far as what we propose as the roadway is concerned.
Yeah, Supervisor Natoli, if I could add, Caltrans has been pretty reasonable in some discussions we've had with them about the likely requests that we would have for the corridor. And so while it's still under their jurisdiction, they would still work with us on what we would like to build out there. Part of the value of the relinquishment would be that we wouldn't have to have that extra time associated with going through Caltrans and having their review. Okay. So that's why the fee program itself is anticipating the same roadways that we would have done with or without relinquishment.
Okay, thanks. Well, got you there. Then just on a specific element of that, you know, it's either going to have fee district or some other funding source. But that intersection at Bradshaw, at Jackson, the westbound approach, we've done some of the southbound with the SMUD project, south to west. Where are we with that? Because I know we got to work to the Caltrans process, but it is desperately needed to have, you know, an auxiliary turn lane for west to northbound movements, Jackson Highway to Bradshaw, and I assume we're going to have to fund that. And so, where are we, Ron, with that?
So we do have staff working on a solution to that. We've also met with Caltrans to let them know that we are in the process of looking at that. And so as we start to finish the preliminary engineering, we'll be working with Caltrans to figure out a solution.
Do you have a time frame?
You know, I do think that over the next 5 or 6 months, we'll have kind of settled in on what can be done.
Okay. I'm glad you said months. I was sitting on the edge of my chair. I thought you were going to say years.
Yeah, and we'll be looking at. We're also looking at the permanent solution, but looking at what we can do in the interim.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thanks.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, I have no one signed up to speak on this item. I know that Supervisor Peters wants to make a statement about how best to separate various aspects of this action item so that she can avoid a potential conflict.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to move the item accepting all of the roads in Mather that are listed here.
Is that clear enough for the record? Okay. Chair will second that. Please vote.
Unanimous vote with those members present, and let the record reflect that this is approving the item except for all of the roads in the Mather, listed under Mather, and we'll go to the board, to the record, and actually make sure that those are listed.
Okay, you don't need a separate motion.
You don't need a second vote then for the balance?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Okay, I'd move the balance.
Okay, it's been moved by Supervisor Tully, second by Supervisor Frost. Please vote.
And the motion carries with Supervisor Peters recusing.
Very good, thank you.
And as modest as it may be, and let the record show this is a fee reduction.
Right.
Modest is the right word.
Yeah, very
But it's going the right direction.
That's your cue back there. Okay. Next item, please.
Okay, so for item 58, this is the performance of the Sacramento County Mental Health System Report.
This is a little high for me.
It can be lowered and, yeah.
Thank you. And which advances? This one. Good morning, Chair and members. I'm Ann Arneal, Chair of the Sacramento County Mental Health Board. I'd like to thank you for having me here today to present our report on the performance of county mental health services. This report was prepared to fulfill one of our statutory mandates. We have prepared a rather extensive report, which I think you have in your materials. Today, I'm going to cover 6 specific topics that are outlined here for you. We did cover mobile crisis support teams, but since you approved 6 additional teams last month, I don't believe I need to talk to you about the effectiveness of these programs. I think you're well aware of that. So we'll move on to the Triage Navigator program. The purpose of this program is to reduce unnecessary incarceration and psychiatric hospitalization. In fiscal year, these programs are located in the main jail, at Loaves and Fishes, and at 6 hospitals in their emergency rooms. In fiscal year 17-18, for clients who these programs were able to link to outpatient services, hospitalization was decreased by 36.7%. Which shows that these programs were very effective in accomplishing their goals. These programs also have many qualitative benefits for clients. They help clients navigate to their first outpatient appointment. They can assist clients in picking up their medication, applying for housing, and other benefits. So they are very effective in assisting clients. In terms of inpatient services provided by the hospitals in the county, you can see the volume of services provided to adults and children. For inpatient hospitalization, the 30-day rehospitalization rate is 20.4%. For children, it's 9.7%. The 30-day rehospitalization rate for adults is consistent with the research literature for persons with serious mental illness. That research literature reports that for mood disorders, the rate is 15%, and for persons with schizophrenia, it's 22%. So you can see that that 20.4% rate is well within the realm of rehospitalization for folks with serious mental illness. We can't comment on the children's rehospitalization rate because we could not find a benchmark within the research literature. Regarding full-service partnerships in the Mental Health Services Act, these are programs provided for persons who are at risk of homelessness or incarceration. There are excellent outcomes for the indicators that are listed on the slide here. There is a need to improve employment outcomes. Those outcomes were maintained for 13% of the partners, but for only 2.5% of the partners was there a gain in employment. Employment is actually very important because 90% of clients in California are unemployed. Our recommendation is that the Division of Behavioral Health Services work with full-service partnership providers to increase the emphasis on vocational services. The timeliness of services is one area where we believe there is need for substantial improvement in the county. The Department of Healthcare Services has benchmarks of 7, 14, and 30 calendar days for various types of outpatient services. Sacramento County is significantly out of compliance for meeting these benchmarks for children and adults. And there is a serious risk of adverse consequences for clients. These risks include lack of access to medications, worsening of symptoms, increased use of crisis services, risk of homelessness and incarceration, and increase of costs to the mental health system. In terms of the benchmarks themselves, one example of problems is urgent service requests opened to outpatient providers and the length of time to the first outpatient appointment. The benchmark for that is 7 days. And for adults, the length of time is approximately 30 days, with only 5% meeting that benchmark. There is a benchmark that is in compliance, though, and that's for acute hospital discharge to first psychiatric service. And the county is in compliance for nearly 3/4 of children and adults served. So that is a positive result.
Dr. Neal, can I interrupt for a sec?
Yes.
On the issue of compliance, while I understand what that means, what I don't understand necessarily is how do we, and maybe you have this information, maybe you don't, but how do we compare to other counties?
I don't have that data for other counties.
Okay. I think it'd be interesting for the board, or be good for the board to understand, not just, not just the binary out of compliance, in compliance, but kind of where are we relative to the other counties in the state?
Yes, we could probably look for that data. there is an organization that does analysis for all the other counties in the state, and that data might be available by looking in those reports for other counties.
Thank you.
In terms of timeliness, the division is making attempts to improve timeliness. They have several projects. One is called MedBridge, and that project uses the Adult Psychiatric Support Services Clinic as a medication bridge program for individuals who are unlinked to the mental health plan. They receive services at the urgent care clinic, and the goal is to increase timeliness and engagement by providing psychiatric services until the beneficiary can have their first face-to-face meeting with an outpatient psychiatrist. The other project is the Avatar Scheduler, and in this, the Avatar program schedules the initial appointment using uniform electronic scheduling among adult providers, and the intent is to decrease the no-show rate by eliminating initial delays in obtaining the first appointment with the provider. You have also increased funding in November of 2017 by $44 million, which will expand treatment slots. These slots have been increased by 900 slots to date, which increases the available appointments. The Mental Health Board is going to continue to monitor timeliness by looking at the calendar year 18 and calendar year 19 data, because that's going to be how long it's going to take for these changes to appear in the data. The final issue that we are reporting on today is the capacity to provide services. Since fiscal year 2008-09, the division's budget has not kept pace with inflation in 4 out of 11 years. Sacramento County's average cost per beneficiary lags various indicators. When you compare Sacramento's expenditures with other large counties, we are approximately $1,900 less per beneficiary, and compared with the statewide rate, we're approximately $1,400 less. The EQRO, or External Quality Review Organization, which was the organization I referred to previously, is an independent evaluator. This exists in every state, and it was created by the federal Medicaid statute to independently review county mental health plans. They annually evaluate quality, timeliness, and access to specialty mental health services. This organization reports that the division is in a crisis of inadequate resources to meet beneficiary needs, and that the gap between capacity and demand has reached a point that is directly affecting quality of care. And the lack of timeliness that I reported on is a manifestation of this capacity problem due to a lack of staff to provide available appointment times. The mental health contractors in the county reported to the EQRO that, well, I did want to report first that we are aware that contractors have received COLAs, and this happened in fiscal year 16-17 and fiscal year 18-19. Nonetheless, the contractors are reporting continued problems to the EQRO in their report in fiscal year 18-19. They report that they're carrying caseloads at twice the number of their original contracts. They're dealing with high turnover rates of their most qualified staff due to non-competitive salaries, and that they're not being able to keep up with the cost of doing business.
Can you give us an idea of the order of magnitude in terms of what does that mean to have twice the caseload?
Well, I don't have specific details, but in the contracts, they negotiate a specific number of staff,
right,
a specific number of clients that they're supposed to serve, and they're actually being referred clients at a higher rate than are in the contracts.
No, I understand the concept, but were they initially contracted to have a caseload of 15 and now do they have 30 or?
Oh, no, it's more like their contract rate is 300.
Okay.
And so they're getting clients at, at double that rate.
Okay.
And I could get you that specific information and report back to
I'd like
you.
to have that.
Yeah, I think you're seeing some interest expressed by board members. And Supervisor Tully, you have a question?
Yeah, and some of this relates to, obviously, their contracts, and there were some adjustments made, but is it not the reimbursement rates then? And I think I've seen comparisons, us versus other, like in similar jurisdictions in the state. Is that what we're talking about here? And in addition to, obviously, additional capacity, caseload capacity, then is it the reimbursement rate? Because is that a piece of it?
Well, I believe the reimbursement rate remains constant, but they have the same number of staff trying to serve, double the amount of clients.
No, I followed you on
Right.
that, but is it also that the reimbursement rate in comparison to other counties or communities, I guess it'd be counties, is less than even without the additional caseload? Is there a chart contained here? Have you been given the information to the mental health board that shows that? Because again, I've met with some providers over time now, over the last couple of years. In fact, some very, very recently that showed me the reimbursement rates, and we certainly weren't the lowest, but we weren't leading the pack either.
Right. We haven't been provided that data, but I can get that information about comparative reimbursement rates between counties for you too.
Sure, and I wasn't putting it off on you or the board. I mean, again, obviously, either Mr. Quist or Mr. Bielenson probably have ready access to that information. Obviously, since we're contracting with the contractors. So again, I just was curious of whether or not that was taken into consideration. I get it on the caseload that whatever your reimbursement rate, even if you were leading the pack, but if you double your caseload, the ability then to compensate appropriately for time and staff and the follow-on becomes increasingly difficult with that same amount of staff. So okay, thank you.
Right. To conclude, we have two recommendations regarding capacity, and one is that the Board of Supervisors should continue to increase the division's budget, because we know that you have made increases recently, but we believe that there should be a continued increase in the budget to increase the capacity of services until the average cost per beneficiary approaches that of other large counties or at least the statewide rate, and that contract providers should be given sufficient cost of living increases to account for the cost of doing business and the need to adequately compensate their staff to retain their qualified staff. So that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any additional questions.
Great, thank you. I think we probably do have some questions. First, let me start by thanking you for your service on the Mental Health Board and for a very thorough report back. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank him in absentia, but I want to thank our colleague Patrick Kennedy, who's this board's representative to the Mental Health Board. I know many of the initiatives and challenges that have been expressed in this report are important issues for him, and he's been quite a champion on the Mental Health Board for us and for the county. So I just want to make that clear. And with that, I see that Supervisor Peters is in the queue for a question.
Hey, thank you. This question really is for the county executive, or maybe Peter, I'm Bruce, I'm not sure. The way the report is set up is there is a recommendation of what to do in various subjects. Is it part of this plan that you will come back to us to say you disagree or agree with this recommendation, or you have an ability to fund or not, to make comment on the recommendations?
Sure, I think we should make comments on the recommendations. Dr. Bielenson and Dr. Quist are both here today, and we can certainly come back to the board to provide follow-up performance data. I think it's worth noting, though, from my perspective, Supervisor, that, and I appreciate the comments very, very much and the work that we get with the Mental Health Board, as well as our other stakeholders. The area of mental health services is a key priority for us, as evidenced, I would have to say, by the fact that, as the PowerPoint mentioned, last year, or 2017, we made an aggressive effort with MHSA dollars of about $44 million. And what the PowerPoint did not mention was that just a couple of months ago, I forget when it was, we came to you with an additional significant effort of about $72 million in MHSA dollars. So we're putting those resources out into the community in a very, frankly, aggressive way, recognizing not just what the PowerPoint pointed out in terms of performance, but the overall need for mental health services in our
So
community.
the additional money that went out this year probably wouldn't be reflected in this, the timeliness.
Very good question.
and
I
numbers
don't
in this
think it's
report.
reflected, I forget the acronym, I'm sorry, that did the assessment of timeliness.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that. I think Dr. Quist can speak to that, or Dr. Bielenson. That's a very good question. Because that just occurred, and we're still in the process of putting that money out on the
Right,
street.
I know it takes a
So,
while to put the money
very
out.
likely not.
Okay.
Can I offer a follow-up question too, or suggestion? The last point that the doctor made in the presentation was a recommendation to seek parity with other counties in
Right.
terms of our budgeting, our investment. Well, I certainly appreciate that, and you heard from me, in fact, earlier when I interrupted, that we want to see some comparison in other regards to other counties of similar size when it comes to administration, provision of mental health services. But do we have, do we possess, for lack of a better phrase, a strategic plan of sorts that looks at other metrics besides just where we compare to other counties in terms of the, how are we doing in terms of the outcomes that we want, so that it's not just we're budgeting because Alameda County budgets
Right.
X amount, but we're budgeting because we have a shortfall based on where we think we need to be in certain,
Right.
given certain parameters in terms of the totality of mental health services for Sacramento County residents.
Yes, we do, and I'll turn that over to Dr. Quist.
I'm sorry, could you elevate
It's on
your tall guy?
Yeah.
We do, and I'll have Dr. Quist touch on that.
Okay.
I just wanted to point out the $72 million is additional dollars that was left over in previous years in our MHSA that most other counties have huge sums so doing, that you guys went ahead and applied to existing problems. So we have our ongoing $56 million or so coming in from MHSA. You put forth $72 million more dollars in excess of that. In August and November, we've already started hiring from the November approval of the SRA. It was the SRA, is that what it's called? We've already started hiring those 29 people. So in answer to, I think Supervisor Peters' question, the numbers would not appear yet in the 1819 or 1920, obviously.
Thank you.
And if I could, just a couple other things. We're aggressively moving on an IMD waiver. The IMD waiver, which is a statewide waiver, it precludes Medicaid dollars, Medicaid dollars from being spent on institutions of greater than 16 beds, which is why we have this weird 16-bed requirement. So we are working with DHCS on that. And thirdly, I should point out that, as I think I've talked with many of you before, about the fact that prescription psychiatric meds are not being provided at discharge from the main jail, which leads to a problem of the revolving door, people being released without their meds, not having services, decompensating, ending up 5150 in the emergency department, and then back either in the emergency room or homeless or back to jail. We finally have got approval to do the prescription medications for sentenced incarcerees as they leave the jail, to give them medications of between 14 and 28 days to cover them until they get into
that are
treatment.
fulfilled, I assume, through our own pharmacy.
Through the county health departments.
Yeah.
So yes, so I just wanted to mention those three things.
Great. Thank you. I did have a question. That was one of the notes I had written down during the course of the presentation, was what are some of the nuances of the quote-unquote warm handoff of inmates when they are released and if they are being administered psychiatric care, including prescription of medications. How do we make sure that that goes uninterrupted so that there's no lapse in the prospect of decompensation?
So we actually have that process in place. It should start, I want to say later this month, but I would say probably January.
Okay, great. I know that Supervisor Natoli's been patient.
Yeah, thank you, and welcome back, Dr. Bielenson. I just, a couple of things that were in the report, and one that I consistently ask about because I think it's indicative of some of the stressors when it comes to the allocation of resources, and that is that the number of inpatient bed days, and I think we're, last count if I remember, we were 28 or 29 million, which is 28 or 29,000 inpatient days, and I know you've responded to that at the podium in the past, and you know, the initiatives that we have that are community-based, that are, you know, below, you know, acute or crisis, that, you know, hopefully would stem some of that, obviously. You know, we're having some effect, but it's certainly not necessarily showing in the number of bed days. I guess if we didn't have those things, we'd probably see even more significant numbers of the inpatients. So I guess I was curious around that particular part of it, because that's such a draw at $1,000 a day with the hospital systems. And again, a lot of that's not even mental health related care. It's keeping somebody, I guess, safe and in place momentarily. But
so two things on that. One, the IMD waiver that Supervisor Frost, Dr. Frost mentioned to me, Supervisor Frost mentioned to me a couple days ago, would make a huge difference because it would allow Medicaid to cover some of the costs, 50% of the costs.
Okay.
Secondly, with our $72 million that you gave us to use on the extra money, at least $14 million or so is going to be going to housing, including board and cares on the downside, to be able to unload people from this, I've been calling it a constipated system, where the system is stuck. Thank you.
We all got the analogy, I guess.
Medical term.
The problem is that so many of the people end up in the psychiatric hospitals and then can't get stepped down because there isn't anything to step them down to. We're actually looking at doing an RFP process for the $14 million to do a lot of board and cares, and by paying them at an appropriate rate, because many of them have gone out of business recently because they're paid at a very low rate. So we're looking at those two things as potential significant improvements in the system.
So, but these would be relicensed or licensed board and cares. To your point, and again, I think we've had that conversation, certainly even at this dais, of that, you know, we've seen a significant number of them go out, and yet de facto we're seeing others that, you know, do a room and board and, you know, use some level of, I guess, qualified independency to allow them to maybe skirt around some of the regulations. But I think having some ability to, you know, move people from the emergency setting to something that would allow for stabilization, but provide, you know, a solid level of mental health support, but also other support for some of the other needs. I guess I wanted to ask too, and it was what really caught my attention in Dr. Arneal's presentation, is the timeliness, because I think, again, that in and of itself, and there are different measures for that, but you know, access to services, obviously in the community, or if there are walk-in services, obviously, if there's an immediate crisis, you know, transport to emergency rooms and so forth. But you know, the follow-on for both outpatient services, but you know, as needs are identified, obviously self-identified, or families with children and so forth. I guess your assessment of how we're doing. I mean, you know, Ann pointed out, you know, 7, 14, 20, 30-day triggers, but if you need somebody's attention like right away, either a follow-on appointment, to your point about meds for those exiting jail, if you don't see somebody, you just left incarceration circumstances, even with your meds, I mean, that's going to be a help. But if you don't get to see somebody between 14 or 28 days, you're going to run out of medication, and God knows what happens. Well, we do know what happens.
So since Ryan's been here, actually, there's been a significant decrease in weights, particularly on the substance use side, if I'm not mistaken. Which when I started was about 3 months for adult men, and about 6 weeks for adult women, and that's gone down dramatically since then. I know it's not specifically mental health; it's behavioral health.
Right.
But we do track these things, and again, the $72 million of new dollars should go to, or obviously expanding a variety of existing programs, as well as doing some new prevention, early intervention, and innovation programs. And the expansion should help both with some of the COLA and some of the timeliness. But again, that does not appear yet in Dr. Arneal's presentation, although the 44 million did.
If I may add to that, Supervisor, and this goes to Supervisor Peters' question as well as Supervisor Cerna, I would suggest that we come back to the board. Once this money's been put in the community, we see the effect of it. Let's see how this, and we got to believe it's going to impact the timeliness and the other issues that were brought up. We're going to be tracking that to see if that is indeed the case, but we can report back to you on that actual experience.
Well, yeah, I think it's a good idea, and obviously I appreciate the engagement of the Mental Health Board and certainly
Absolutely.
the leadership that's shown here. But I think knowing that the dollars won are doing what we intended, and hopefully the outcomes reflect that. But I think, if not, then it says we've got other things we need to address. And again, you've got to qualify professionals, but I just think that some of this is time sensitive, no doubt about it. So.
Mr. Gill and Mr. Wagstaff had suggested that we do, and that we are doing, and we've started as one of the first departments to do so, is to get performance metrics that we report on regularly and have a dashboard for such. And we actually can give you the numbers on the number of days, et cetera, now. So we will, but I would promise to you, pledge to you guys, is to give you whatever data we can give you now based on what Dr. Arneal was talking about. And then, again, give you a report maybe in a year or so on how we're doing with the MHSA money.
Well, and we've had those Child Protective Services measures in place for many years now that tell us about follow-on, certainly the criticality of timeliness, both for investigations, interventions, and such. And I think that's been very helpful, certainly in guiding, I think, board decisions here with resources, but also I think with the department and implementing any number of measures, and give credit to the professional staff for their work both in the field, but also in, making sure that those measures are, guideposts that, help. And if we're falling short, then, try to know the why-fors and, recognize we have limitations on our resources, but, figure out how we can best address those areas where we're, and also acknowledge where we're doing better, and doing well. Yeah. I don't know, Nab, you were going to speak. I'm sorry. I had you did.
No, I was just going to point out that this is an issue that the urban counties are looking at it, not only just what's the dollar going out, what kind of services, and at the executive and CAO level, we've committed to share all the data with each other, because as the board knows, different urban counties have had in the past a big sum of money that's not gotten out. We put money out, San Diego's looking at it, Orange is looking at it, and we're going to engage our mental health professionals with the execs to put more information out and see what we can garner from that information and guide some of our decisions. So that work's on its underway too.
Supervisor Frost.
Yes, Dr. Bielenson, I wanted to, first I wanted to address page 10 of her PowerPoint and just comment, because since I've been here over the last couple years, I've been visited multiple times by some of these people who are contracting with the county, and that conversation around the wage inequities has come up, and to the point where I understand there are some contractors who have had almost complete walkouts where everybody resigned because they got better jobs somewhere else, because they're just not being paid as much as what's comparable out there. So I wonder if there's a way that we can review those contracts and see if there's something we need to do to improve that situation. And I want to, you mentioned no place to step down to, and I understand, when we're in this acute setting where someone goes into the emergency room and they're maybe on a 5150 hold for 3 days, and then it's extended 30 days into an acute setting, and then from what I'm, pardon me?
No, go ahead.
From what I'm understanding, from the acute setting, there is a subacute long-term setting that they should be able to step down to, and then to a board and care. There's a gap in services at, I don't know if this is true. I'm asking, I guess, because from what I understand, from the acute setting to the board and care can sometimes, with serious mental illness, be a challenge, because those kinds of people are not necessarily ready for a situation where they might hurt them. They may not have the as intense oversight, or whatever you want to call it, titration of their medications, attention to their what they're doing, time out of a room. You know, in the acute setting, they're in a room. They don't get out as much, so they don't have the normalcy that they might get at home. The point I'm trying to make, and I know we're having that conversation around, you know, a long-term care a long-term care facility where people who are seriously mentally ill, who can be placed in something like that instead of in our jail. But I would like to see if we could explore, number one, where are we with subacute long-term, as far as, you know, my understanding is there should be 40 beds per 1,000 people, and we have something like 53 beds for 1.5 million, or I don't really know. I know that we don't have what we need to have as far as the subacute. So I'd like to explore what we can do with the Mental Health Services Act funds to improve the continuity of care that takes a person from the acute setting to the subacute to the board and care. This would make it easier on families who are trying to normalize their loved one into a situation where they're gonna be okay, and we're not gonna have the exacerbated problems.
I'll let Ryan answer the second part of the question. The first part of the question, in terms of COLAs, obviously we don't pay as well as Kaiser, for example. So we do in our system lose some people to Kaiser, some social workers and LMFTs. But what we're trying to do is actually work in a coordinated way with the FQHCs. Ryan knows this to some extent, but not fully yet. FQHCs to provide some of the psychiatric care and get reimbursed at FQHC rates at some of these contractors, and instead use some of that money for hiring more and at higher levels, the social workers and the LMFTs. That's something new to the community that we're just starting to look at as of this month. So that's something that would be hopefully coming forward, and that would help to provide higher salaries for the social workers, et cetera, because the psychiatric care would be provided on-site, at the same site, by the FQHCs. There's a lot of interest in the FQHCs. And I should mention one other thing. We'll be starting probably in July, school-based mental health services at between 10 and 15 of the schools in the county, which will be, again, cost neutral, because of FQHC will be satelliting our FQHC, our Federally Qualified Health Center, our Sacramento County Health Center, to use as a satellite site at each of the different schools to provide mental health services on site at each of those 10 to 15 schools, with a plan to go up to maybe 140 or 150 in the next few years. So that's, again, a way of looking at existing funding in a different way that's been looked at before. Let me turn over to Ryan on the subacute.
So when you say school-based mental health, what is that? Is that like promoting mental health?
No.
Or is that
It's
treating mental illness?
It's having full clinicians treating mental illness at the site, at the school.
Okay.
Which is new.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Supervisors. Ryan Quist, Behavioral Health Services. Relating to the subacute question, this is something that we've been paying a very close attention to. First of all, as a part of the 29 positions that were approved recently, we have, I think it was 3 positions that are going to be working specifically on doing those placements. both assessing the placement for its appropriateness as well as working with the individual that needs to be placed. In addition, we have a board letter coming forward, I believe in January, that's going to be for adult residential treatment. This is a subacute placement, and we're hoping to expand that. And then we also have, as a part of that same board letter, we'll also have augmented boarding care. So the boarding cares are having problems staying in business at their current rates. So we're going to augment that funding by giving them a patch in order to be able to have additional funds to help keep them in business. And I think that together, it's about $5 million that's being invested in this area. So I think that's one significant thing that we're doing in the very short term. We're talking January. In addition to that, we have another skilled nursing facility with it's called Psychiatric Special Needs Program, a SNF and NTP, something like that, which is coming to Sacramento County as well. We're talking about 60 beds, which would be really amazing. I don't know the exact time on that line on that. I'm hoping before mid-2020.
On the residential subacute, are those locked?
No.
So someone could go from acute to subacute and walk.
It's a voluntary, they are assessed as a part of it. They're asked, hey, do you want to come to this particular context? And they're engaged in a way that helps them understand the benefit of doing that. And so they're actually going there by choice.
So is that a board and care or a subacute?
It's a subacute.
What defines it as subacute?
Subacute technically is probably anything between a full acute to the boarding cares. So it's sort of a supported living environment.
So there might be a difference in how people feel about acute versus subacute, because some of the families that I'm talking to are basically saying they feel the acute is pretty intense. They're locked in a room, they don't get outside, they can't smoke. Yeah. And if they were in a subacute where they can't walk, where they would be watched until they get them normalized on their titrated or whatever you call it. So so
the adult residential treatment facilities, what they'll do is they'll have very structured activities with staff on site that are treatment staff on site helping support the individuals with whatever their needs are at the moment. It's a very structured environment, helping them, have different activities with their peers. And that's sort of, it's very different from that acute setting.
Okay, and then lastly, I wanted to see if, I know for serious mental illness, there are those who are, there are crisis situations where if we could get them before the crisis, we would save a lot of money in first responders and emergency care and hospitalizations. And I wonder if we can explore the assisted outpatient therapy and the concept of an alternative for those who are seriously mentally ill, who are maybe drug abusers, using drugs to medicate themselves, to require, and I'm talking about the Laura's Law. I'd like to see if there's a way that we can look into a program that would capture that, divert that situation before it exacerbates.
Yes, we're definitely willing to talk about that.
Thank you.
Supervisor Tully.
Yeah, just a quick follow on, Ryan, and a question about, since you're going to be bringing very quickly to the board this supplemental support for board and cares, is there going to be some quality certification, because not every board and care is alike. And I think that, we have, over time, certainly with programs with more than 6, asked for, good neighbor policies. But beyond that, for those people that would go into those situations, and there are many good providers. So this is not meant to be any way insinuate that that's not a good setting for a lot of folks. But I think it's important, rather than just giving some bridge dollars, that behind it, if we're going to put our county mental health dollars for county residents and folks in need, that would step down. And I know about state licensing, I get all that, but the frequency of visits and so forth is, I think it leaves a lot to be desired. And I guess I would ask that if we're going to expend our precious dollars in that way, that maybe we have a way to further certify quality of care and attention to it, because board and care is a semi-independent or independent to the degree that you're paying for room and board, or somebody is subsidizing that. You've got a place to stay with certain facilities that are pretty basic in a lot of respects, but I think no less essential. Then I guess I would ask that maybe as a part of that there be some expertise regarding medication, dispensation, if in fact, we don't really have a formal ombudsman program with the county any longer. We use Area 4 Agency on Aging, and that's helpful. But if we're going to enter this arena, which I don't discount in any way, I guess I'm going to ask, if you're going to bring it to us in January, that there be some thought given to, not to chew up money administratively, but that there be some additional oversight, and we just don't say your state license is good enough. I think we need to, as a part of that bridge funding, make sure that the attention to the folks who are placed there, but certainly those that are coming via the mental health system here in this county, that they be assured not just the essentials, but obviously hopefully making sure that they can get to their appointments, if they're going to have follow-on medical appointments, and that the quality of the living arrangement is one that would be something that we, for ourselves or for our close family members or friends, that we would be pleased with that. And so again, they can be fairly austere. On the other hand, I think if we're going to help, bridge some of that gap, that needs to be a part of us. I don't know, Ryan, if you maybe had experience in this regard in the past, but my experience has said that not all board and cares are the same.
Sure. So Supervisor Natoli, I know that you know that the difference, but just for the public really quick, the room and boards are unlicensed spots, and then board and cares are licensed. So we are not trying to propose the room and boards as a part of this. We're proposing the board and cares, which are licensed. But you're right, there are differences across different board and cares. And that's what I mentioned, that we were going to be including some positions. I don't want to get the number wrong, but there's a number of positions that were included in those 29 that you all approved for us, that are going to be specifically focused on that. They go out, they assess the location, make sure it's the right fit for they assess the individual, they assess the location, make sure they're the right fit for one another, that they're going to have the right level of support. In addition, these individuals that are staying in the boarding cares are still going to be linked to services, so they're going to be receiving ongoing services from the division.
Okay, now, I appreciate the distinctions you made, Ryan, and yes, I think that's a very important distinction. But state licensure isn't, an assurance that there's always going to be a certain level of quality of care and attention, both in the facility or the home itself, but also in the attentiveness of obviously the people that are employed to operate and oversee the goings on in the board and cares. It provides a higher level of assurance, and I guess I certainly encourage that. But I think that as a part of our helping to bridge and helping provide sufficient support so they can, have a business model that, that allows them to employ people that are capable and competent, but also to maintain the facilities. And I think that the eyes upon that are important and having proper placement. So again, I assume you can develop that more when you bring that forward to us in January. But being that you put it out there, I wanted to just give you a heads on that or heads up that it's an important element as far as I'm concerned. And I trust that you see it that way too when what you just said. So thanks.
Great, thanks. I just would add, given the comment by Supervisor Frost about an interest in Laura's Law, that I would strongly encourage that any time this board is going to an open session get a report back on any prospective merits on Laura's Law or the nuances of Laura's Law, that we not forget that we actually do have a conservatorship program here in Sacramento County, CARES Plus, and if we are going to, at any time in the future entertain looking at Laura's Law becoming something that might be considered and implemented in Sacramento County, we also simultaneously understand that we do have something in place today that I would argue is equally effective. It's not as widely known as Laura's Law, and perhaps there's ways that we can enhance the outcomes that that we all want by way of that being a component part of our mental health continuum of care. But I just don't want to have a conversation that is just focused on one, possible way to enhance conservatorship programs, in particular when it comes to again that cog in our mental health machinery here. Supervisor Tolley?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just one other question. It was on page 54 of the appendix. It was the performance report, and it relates to the mental health triage navigator program. And so the merits of the program, I think, are multiple. But what was kind of stark here, and maybe Ryan or Dr. Bielens, or maybe you could, Dr. O'Neill could speak to it, but in the main jail, for the numbers referred and then the number screened, the percentages starkly lower than any of the others in releases from hospitals, including Loaves and Fishes and UCD. And I guess I just was curious as to why, if the referrals are made, you have them in an incarcerated situation prior to their release. Maybe the screening occurs after and people just disappear. I don't know, but so what's the explanation behind only 17% being screened?
I think it's a challenging context because it's a locked facility and we're talking about our behavioral health folks needing to get into them, being able to get to the individuals to screen them. That's one part of it. But I think that what we're currently doing is we're working very closely with Correctional Health Services using this as our main mechanism of trying to link them with services on the way out. So this is something Sandy Damiano and I have been talking about and working on over the last few months. So I'm hoping we'll see those numbers change going forward.
Yeah, because the number of referrals is double any other facility, recognizing the number of folks. But I think to Dr. Bielens' comments about sending meds with them, but having screen not only for medications but for appropriate service, hopefully timely service once they get out. Because otherwise, to what you've all described, is that you get that circle. It just keeps going on and on and on. So. Again, challenging or not, and recognizing that, including litigation that's come against this county, that if this be an area, if we got 1,000 referrals in 2017-18, or almost 1,050, and we only saw 17% of those folks, again, I wouldn't expect you're going to see them all, but. So
we are getting a proposal that is going into Whole Person Cares Part 3, which is unlike the other Whole Person Cares, which you all dealt with before, has no local match, no requirements, very open list of projects that we can use. We are going to concentrate predominantly on the correctional folks and connecting them to care for this exact reason. And that's going to be about $2.6 million. It's good for 4 years, but we're going to probably use it in a year and a half. So you should see some improvement in that as well. But it's a very difficult population to get connected, and many people just want to get out and leave.
And go.
So
I
will
get
never
that.
be 100%.
But you can, I guess the screening part of that, to your point, that, while they're still in, they're in custody, and you can't force people to be, I guess, screened, but either that or if the referrals are appropriate, and maybe, so, I think that needs to be, on the other hand, are you, appropriately referring?
Here's the problem.
Yeah.
Only about 35 or 40%, I may be wrong, of any given day coming out are sentenced population who have been there for a period of time.
Right.
The vast majority of people have been there for a day, 2 days, 3 days, and so getting them referral, it's just it can't even be set up with the sheriff's department.
Okay.
So you're really talking if you and we're looking at the prescription meds for our sentenced population where there's been time where the doctor can write the prescription that they're already on and get it to our pharmacy and get it out the door. So to really look at this in a legitimate fashion, I think you have to look at the sentence population, what percent of the sentence population gets referred and gets placed, as opposed to the overall population.
That's an
at least
important
the way it is
distinction,
now.
Dr. Beelens, and I would concur with you then. So maybe that on the sheriff's side of it, whoever's doing the referral, either in, if it's our jail psychiatric services, which are under contract or whatever, that make sure that there's a clear distinction, because otherwise I think if you just look at the number on this chart, it kind of screams out at you. But if in fact there's an explanation, as you just said, which I can see that, then I think that needs to be a part of the whatever chart we put together in the future to chart that. So, okay, thanks.
Supervisor Frost?
Oh, yeah, I just thought after Supervisor Cerna's comments, maybe I should, for clarity's sake, specifically say that specifically I'm interested in the assisted outpatient therapy. I'm understanding based on some of the articles that I've read that there are states that and counties that have started this program with the assisted outpatient therapy, AOT, and it's reduced their ER mental health population by something like 39%. They're having some great success with it. So I think that would be a good place to start, just to see what everyone else is doing, and is there some opportunity there for us?
We'd be very happy to report back to you in either a good time and manner or a file and receive whatever you wish to see on both of those issues.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We don't have anyone sign up to speak on this matter. This is a receive and file, is it not, Madam Clerk?
That's correct.
Okay. And then we need to we went a little too fast with regard to an earlier item. For item 56, we actually need a motion to adopt the resolutions. This was also a receive and file. So the chair will make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Tully. Please vote.
Supervisor Peters?
It was,
Said.
this was the...
I thought it was a receive and file, but...
It was, but I was handed a note by the clerk that said that we actually had to act on the resolutions.
There was for item 2 of the report, you need to adopt the resolutions to make the findings for Government Code 66001.
For item 2?
There were 2 recommendations.
In item 56?
Correct.
Yeah. It's not the item where you were expressing some concern about the need to recuse, so I think we're okay there.
I'm going to, as I can't look back.
And the motion carries with Supervisor Peters recusing.
Okay. All right. If I'm not mistaken, that concludes our morning session.
Yes.
Okay. Are we all prepared to do appointments at this point, or nominations? Because I like to just maybe have a clean afternoon in front of us. If there's no objection.
That would be item 61.
Okay.
You clear the screen? Thanks.
Okay, for item 61, you are continuing to January 14th, 2020, the Sacramento County Youth Commission, South Sacramento Area Community Planning Advisory Council. You are continuing to February 11th, the Cordova Community Planning Advisory Council, Casumnas Area Community Planning Advisory Council, Delta Citizens Municipal Advisory Councils, Elk Grove Casumnas Cemetery District, In-Home Supportive Services Advisory Committee, Local Child Care Planning and Development Council, Maternal, Child, and Adolescent Health Advisory Board, North Highlands Foothill Farms Community Planning Advisory Council, and the Vineyard Area Community Planning Advisory Council. And for your matters today, you have the Disability Advisory Commission. Mr. Cerna.
Okay, Chiefs are recommending nomination of Hendridge Holloway and reappointing William Fillet, Randy Hicks, Eugene Lozano Jr., Carol Moss, Reggie Nelson, and Patricia Gaynor. Please continue the remainder to February 11th.
First Five Commission.
Chiefs are recommending the nomination of Stephen Wirtz, Eric Fernandez, E. Garcia, and Christina Elliott as the community member seats, and then reappointing Dr. Lee Turner as a community member alternate, and then waive the process.
Second.
Thank you. Please vote.
Unanimous vote with those members present.
Chiefs are also recommending nominating Elizabeth Hassett and Scott Moak to the vacated community member alternate seats for Steve Wirtz and Christina Elliott, and to also waive the process.
Second.
Please vote.
Unanimous vote with those members present. Okay. For the Galt Arno Cemetery District, Mr. Natoli.
Yes, I would nominate Guy Rudder, incumbent.
Okay.
We still have one seat. We'll hold that over till late January, please.
Mission Oaks Recreation and Park District, Ms. Peters.
Please continue to January 14.
Okay. We have Sacramento County Mental Health Board, Mr. Natoli.
Continue to January 14th, please.
Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Commission, Mr. Natoli.
Likewise, January 14th, please.
Okay, you got it, and that concludes your nominations.
Okay, great. Thank you. We don't have anyone signed up to speak on items not on the agenda, correct?
Correct. I haven't received any speaker slips.
All right. We are in recess till 2 o'clock. There is no closed session.
I got a.
There is a closed session.
There is not a closed session. It's going to be continued.
Oh.
The items on this will be continued to the next meeting.
Let me make a note. I'll make a note on that. Actions.
Oh, yeah.